Browns back on the practice field for day 2 of mandatory minicamp. And look, the big update, the thing we're going to be looking for every day when we're out here, Amari Cooper, he was again not on the field, Mary Kay. So this kind of continues what happened yesterday. It means that this thing is real. Amari Cooper definitely holding out, trying to seek that new extension.
Yeah, I would be very shocked if he shows up tomorrow for the final day of minicamp. So it looks like he will have missed all of OTAs, all of minicamp, and then the Browns and Amari will have to hope that they can get something worked out over the break so that he doesn't miss a beat and he can start out with the Browns at the Greenbrier for the beginning of training camp at the end of July. That's what everybody has to hope for. But I think one of the important things here is that, again, when you have Deshaun Watson going to bat for you and saying he's the best in the game, I think that means that the quarterback, QB1, wants his WR1 here as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I would imagine that this isn't like, Andrew Berry didn't show up on Tuesday and was like, oh, Amari's not here and wants a new contract. I'm sure he's known this was something that was possible. It's just now it feels a little more real. He's facing, if he doesn't show up tomorrow, the Browns could fine him about $100,000 for the 3 days missed total. Of course, holding out in camp would be a lot more difficult, Ashley, but this is just kind of a storyline that is probably going to carry through the summer at least to the Greenbrier.
Yes, I know. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but financially, a lot harder to actually truly hold out for training camp. You lose about $40,000 a day if you're a player that decides to do that. So that's why we've seen hold-ins become more common, where guys go there, maybe they don't fully participate in specific drills. But I do agree. I mean, this is the story until it no longer is, really, in my mind. And even David Njoku today, I thought, was another guy who really sort of went to bat in terms of how important Amari Cooper is to this team, to this pass game, and I think we're seeing players handle this about the way you would expect.
Yeah, everybody seems to understand how important Amari Cooper certainly is to all of this. Now, Jerry Jeudy, he was here on Tuesday, but we didn't see him. He was out on the field on Wednesday, Mary Kay. Didn't practice. He was off to the side in a walkthrough shirt, but, still, just having him out there at practice is at least meaningful.
Yeah, that's better. Seeing him is better than not seeing him, and we didn't see him yesterday. So it leaves you to wonder what's going on inside there. But I didn't see any body part wrapped or anything like that when I saw him today. I didn't see him limping or anything like that. So I think that he probably should be fine. I was told it was a minor injury. I would expect him to be out there for training camp in full force.
And Ashley, when you think about Jeudy, when you think about Amari Cooper, when you think about Elijah Moore, that's the Browns' top 3. They really want to get these guys all together on the field. We haven't gotten to see it yet, but again, at least like Mary Kay mentioned, there wasn't anything noticeably wrong with Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, I mean, I walked over to the side where players who sat out practice today were working with trainers. They were all doing yoga poses. It looked like a very relaxing time, actually, honestly. And Jerry was doing everything there with the trainers. And then, like we said, we did see him out there for the rest of practice. But yeah, I think for most people going into this week, we were looking forward to seeing this passing attack potentially at full strength for the most part, even though most of what they do is on air. And we just still haven't seen it yet. So we're going to have to wait about a month and a half, probably, hopefully, best case scenario, longer to see it.
Now, one guy we did see for sure was Myles Garrett, and he spoke to us for the first time today in the spring. Of course, he wasn't at OTA, so this week has been our first opportunity to see him on the practice field. Mary Kay, what stood out to you about what Myles had to say?
Well, there were a couple of things, actually. First and foremost, that game against the Texans, the wild card playoff game, the dud, the 45-14 loss, that is sticking in his mind. He can't get it out of his mind, and he aims to show people that he's going to make up for that. And I think that's great, because you need your biggest and brightest stars to shine the brightest and play their best games in those huge games. That's what they need Myles to do. I also asked him about the fact that he's kind of tailed off at the end of seasons over the last several years. And it's because he takes so much wear and tear on his body. But he did note that he wants to do everything possible to try to stay as strong as he can for the home stretch and for the playoffs. They need him. to be an amazing player in those games.
Yeah, Ash, I've got to say, I've been impressed that most of these defenders, Jim Schwartz, they haven't really parroted that bad day to have a bad day line. They've admitted that game stuck with them. That loss against Houston stuck with them. So that certainly stood out to me when Myles talked about that. Did anything stand out to you from Myles?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the most interesting point of it all to me, is kind of continuing that message, because it seems like in-house there was one message coming out to us in the winter right after that game, but once we've gotten to be able to speak to these defenders, to speak to these coaches, to speak to Jim Schwartz, they really have, it seems like, figured out what some of the issues were. They're willing to acknowledge that and try to build from that, because obviously being Defensive Player of the Year was a huge goal for Myles, something obviously he talked about today, and I know we got asked about that. Again, like, where do you go from here? And I think what Mary Kay said, that's exactly the next step, figuring out how to prevent that tailing off that has kind of plagued him these last few years.
Okay, we've got one more day of minicamp on Thursday. We're going to hear from a whole bunch of position coaches that day. We will cover everything that happened today in Berea and, of course, everything that happens tomorrow and beyond at cleveland.com/Browns.